creating a culture of love.
These reactions are often so unconscious, so fast that you think you have no other option.
And it's not so much analysis paralysis. It's more like I'm going to do it until it's perfect, until I get it right.
Slow down. You don't need to make an evaluation right now. Take a second, feel whatever's happening in the body, be attentive to whatever's arising and passing, and then take your time to say, how you feel or paint the picture in your mind, because the mind so quickly wants to create a narrative around whatever's happening, but it's like, let me pump the brakes and let me just check in. How am I actually feeling?
I'm excited. We got Diego, young Pueblo, Perez in the house. I've been following your work for years. I love how you write. I love your poetry. It lines up with what we're doing here. And I want to jump out the gate. You've got this new book coming out, and I had to read one of the poems, and this is going to be the premise of what we're going through. So this poem is on page 21. I used to see my past as a hindrance, all of the mistakes I have made, all of the failed relationships, all of the pain I was given that I never wanted to carry. At first, I wanted to forget these memories, to scratch them out of the book of my life. But now I see that even though my story started heavy, that did not stop me from finding my inner light. My sadness was a motivator. My pain was my teacher. If you listen closely to your hurt, it will say, there is a better way than this. And all you have to do is respond. Show me I'm ready.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm glad you highlighted that one, because that one encapsulates, I think, the journey for a lot of us, not just myself included, but you can see, if you live life, there's going to be hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's going to be hurt. And even if there's not trauma, there will be some degree of hurt, moments where intense things will happen. And if you don't learn how to process those emotions, if you have no tools with which to sort of engage with that inner world, then all that stuff will just keep accumulating.
Yeah.
And that'll just make you heavier and heavier and heavier. And that's one thing that I like to highlight is every time you react, it's an imprint on the mind. It's getting imprinted on the mind continuously. So finding a way to make the mind lighter, to not walk around with such heaviness, I feel like is not only one of our individual missions as human beings, but to just know that it's possible. You can heal yourself and you can start again, start a new life.
Yeah. No, and I agree wholeheartedly, and that's true. I mean, life is a test. It's full of up and downs. And that poem landed because I could relate to it. I've written from that space. I've created from that space. And you said one key thing there is we're reacting.
Yeah.
But when we start unpacking what's happening, when we start seeking tools, we can actually respond.
Right.
And that's from a more empowered state.
Totally. It's from a present state, not from just past evaluations. And I think these reactions are often so unconscious, so fast that you think you have no other option. But when you start turning that lens inward and you start developing self-awareness, space opens up in the mind and you start seeing, I can feel this particular motivation coming that's from the past, and it wants to make me react in that same defensive way because I feel this danger popping up. And instead you can just think to yourself, wait, there's another opportunity here. There's something else that I can do. I can actually switch up the play. It doesn't need to be the same types of reactions. I can actually try something almost like an experiment, try to do something a little more skillfully. And when you spend time observing yourself and paying attention to the way your emotions move up and down, the way they change, that space opens up because that quality of self-awareness is being developed.
Yeah. And what are some ways that you've started learning to practice that self-awareness muscle? Because we all have different triggers.
Yeah.
And in the respect of that poem that we just read, some of us are bogged down by the past, by living in regret, by shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Yeah.
So what are the things that we can start asking or doing to help us move forward?
I think one of the main things, like one is like I have a daily practice of meditation. I'm meditating daily, twice a day. I practice Vipassana in the Esen Goenka tradition, and I've been doing that for 11 years. So that's been definitely fine-tuning my mind. But when I come into daily life, that practice often shows up as intentionally slowing down when something is, feels overly demanding, or feels like, someone says something to me that I don't like, or some big challenge just pops up out of nowhere. And in my mind is like, slow down. You don't need to make an evaluation right now. Take a second, feel whatever's happening in the body, be attentive to like whatever's arising and passing, and then take your time to say, how you feel, or paint the picture in your mind, because the mind so quickly wants to create a narrative around whatever's happening. But it's like, let me pump the brakes and let me just check in, like, how am I actually feeling? And then over time, and sometimes you do have to act quickly, but you try your best to, even in that moment, you can feel like, okay, that's the immediate reaction. That reaction's kind of rough. Let me try a gentler version of that.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
And realizing, I think something I'm trying to work on right now is like, how am I relating to this situation, and how can I reframe it to relate differently?
Yeah.
And in many cases, we're creating all of this.
Right.
We're getting overwhelmed because maybe we're putting too much on our calendars, putting too much on our plates. And then we spiral out in this autopilot of whatever. And our brains are like, let's mask this. This is going into pain zone. We're freaking out.
Totally.
So slow it down to maybe then speed up again.
I like what you're saying too. And like, I think part of owning our responsibility for all this like healing is also acknowledging the way our perception is influencing our reactions. Because your perception, it's like almost a combination of memory plus evaluation. Like you're just like, everything you're looking at, you're like, oh, this reminds me of that. I liked that from the past, or I didn't like that, but you're so quickly evaluating, and then the body can feel that.
Yeah.
The body it's literally feeling that, and you're like, whoa, I don't like this feeling.
Yeah.
Or I really like this feeling. I want more of it, So these systems work so fast, but when you cultivate the mind, they kind of open up almost like a flower, and you can take a good look in there.
So the trick is with being more mindful and more self-aware is if we can slow down to feel this stuff happening, because we can. I think we've either guarded ourselves or just turned off that voice that we have inside of us, or that gut feeling and that thing to just avoid.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the most common, and I don't know historically, but definitely in the modern day way that we cope is just to avoid, because, and it makes sense when you don't know how to process, right?
Yeah.
You don't have tools, and you're like, I don't even know what to do with this anxiety. Like, well, how do I even move through it? I'm going to move away from it, and you try your best to just run. And I think that's what happens to it was what was happening to me for such a long time, where I had this sadness and anxiety that multiplied over time from experiencing the scarcity and the intensity of being a poor immigrant in the United States. Like I was born in Ecuador, came here with my family when I was 4. It was tough. It was really hard times, but I didn't
speak
know.
the language on
Didn't
top
speak
of that,
the
right?
language, didn't have any money. Like it was rough for such an extended period of time that I didn't realize, and it became so normalized that, I didn't see the way it was imprinting all this sadness and anxiety inside of me. And when I got older, got to college, it was like, well, I don't even want to feel it. Like, I don't even, like this stuff that's popping up, like, let me try to roll as many joints as possible to get away from it.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, how can we escape what's happening inside of us with all these extracurriculars, whether it's sports, girls, training, drugs, drinking, you name it, everything to avoid that.
Right.
Now, on top of that, do you ever catch yourself judging yourself for feeling these ways?
I think so. I think it's hard because, like, I mean, we're so attached to perfect, right? We say we're not, but we are. Like, the attachment to perfection is
I know.
It's so strong. Like, we want everything to flow so beautifully and smoothly, always around pleasant situations. We never want to, but that's just not life. And when we come to terms with that, it becomes easier to let go of that judgment on yourself, because it's like, oh, like I made a mistake, my bad, you know, like you wish you were never making mistakes, but that's the reality of it, is like whether you have a good intention or not, someone can easily misperceive you, or you could have said something differently. And there's so many different areas where you can, you know, make a mistake to a certain degree, but then it's like you don't need to beat yourself up for that, for what happened. Just learn from it.
Yeah.
But that's a long game.
Oh, it very much is,
Yeah.
because look, immigrant children, right? And I don't know if you have siblings, or I'm the oldest, so there's this whole, you have to be the example, you have to get it right, you have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And even though I've done a lot of work to get rid of a lot of stuff, there's still some ingrained things there that I still deal with. Like, I want to get it right.
Yeah.
And it's not so much analysis paralysis. It's more like I'm going to do it until it's perfect, until I get it right, which is why I write a lot about like imperfect perfection and perfectly perfect, imperfect. It's like, it's the same thing. The way we look at it, it's just like, how do we start letting go? And the world's going to judge the crap out of me.
Totally.
Why do I need to judge myself?
Yeah, that's really well said. Man, I commend you for being the oldest too. So I have an older brother and a little sister, but I feel really fortunate that I got to watch my brother. So I was 5 years younger than him. And I think in a way, my mom and my dad and my brother were like a team. Like they were holding it down. They were like, you know, my mom and dad were like learning English, and my brother would be fielding a lot of these calls, like, you know, with doctors or with insurance company, whatever was needed. My brother was like in the middle of it, like in the main planning team. And I'd be like there watching and, you know, seeing how he like constantly he was figuring out something brand new, had no context for it. And, yeah, I commend you for also getting through all that, 'cause it's tough.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
But also being in the middle, right?
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
I mean, I think it was interesting. I feel like the effects of that are still, like I'm still learning about it. I felt like I had to be a little, I don't even know if it was louder, but it's almost like I had to just like be cool with being on my own. You know, like my brother was helping lead the team. My sister was a baby. And I was just like, actually a lot of times, like in high school and whatnot, I felt like I just have to maneuver this whole thing. Like I have to figure it out. And I remember there was this one time where I skipped a lot of school in 10th grade. Like 10th grade, I probably missed like 60 something days, or maybe 80 days, like a lot of days.
Yeah.
And they were going to hold me back. And what I ended up doing, you know, and that, you know, please like forgive me out there, right? So this was my like 10th grade mind, was the vice principal was like, look, we need notes for these days, or you're not going to get passed. And I was like, I have a 3.1 GPA. Like, I'm okay. You know, like, let me through. And he was like, no, we need notes. So I just went and just wrote mad notes, you know, signing my mom's name, right? You know, excuse him for this day, excuse him for that day. And then I get caught by a substitute teacher, get sent back to the same vice principal. And, you know, we just had this long discussion. And I was like, look, man, I'm on my own here. Like, my parents, they love me, but they're busy. This is like, I got to figure this thing out on my own. And I'm trying my best, you know, like I have the grades. And then he eventually, something in him, like it clicked. It was like, this dude's trying to figure it out. And he gave me a chance. I'm super grateful to that guy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You know, and then the next year I was in school, because I realized after that, I was like, I don't want to be poor anymore. Like, what's the best way to not be poor? I was like, well, I've seen two things. I was like, you can either go to college or you can get into the drug world. And I was like, well, I don't really want to get shot and I don't want to be in danger. I was like, so I'm going to go to college.
Yeah. I like my life.
Yeah. And then I started getting good grades and like being in school.
Yeah, no, that's good. Sometimes we have these moments that can make or break us. And that was clearly someone looking out for you.
Yeah.
And I can relate. I signed
You signed a bunch of notes, yeah?
6th grade, though.
That's young, man.
Oh, man. And they had me do it. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, we do, that's part of learning, though.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
I think it's also, we're wired to try to find an efficiency, try to push through, try to do the right thing, sort of. But we find ways. We find ways to be resilient.
Yeah, and it's also like you can see, like, especially from that childhood onward, like it's just constant learning. But like the end goal is pretty good. It's like we're trying to do something good, but like we don't know how to get there. Right?
Exactly.
So like those people, like the you know, those that we're looking up to who are there, and they're almost like the lanes that are helping us, like, you know, try it this way, like, you know, not as crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have opportunities to experiment with multiple flavors of people.
Yeah.
Like multiple writers and artists and musicians and food. Why don't we just look at everyone like that? Hey, I didn't like that one. Let me try another way. Let's
Yeah.
seek that out. So when did you become so inquisitive, so curious, wanting to seek these opportunities? Or did that just evolve looking back now?
I think I remember, like, even from when I was a little kid, I was always interested in the macro situation. Like, I think when I got to the United States and I started noticing that there were like income differences, I was like, well, this is really weird. I was like, why is it like this? Like, why are we really poor and other people are less poor and other people are really rich? I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. But as I got older, that kind of introduced me to, you know, I was in Boston. I was really deep into the community organizing, youth organizing world, and we were like helping, you know, empower other young people to just like change the, you know, actual laws in the city of Boston, or change the way our public schools work, or our guidance systems, our transportation systems. And I got to see that there was a lot of like power in numbers and organization. And I, you know, got introduced to like liberation as an external context. But when I started meditating when I was older, like at 24 was when I first started, I was like, oh, this is what was missing. I was like, internal liberation, right? Like these two things need to move together. Because I remember back then when I was younger, like I was part of this organizing group we were really good at it. We would win all the time, and we would get like the mayor, you know, city councilors to yield and be like, yep, we'll give you what you want. And but it didn't change my internal world. Like I still felt like how I felt.
Yeah.
So when I started seeing like, oh, there's even such a thing as internal liberation, I think that opened me up to the reality that, like, you know, healing is possible, and that you can try to affect good change in the world while you're healing yourself. And as time moved forward, you know, I like the healing just like opened up this creativity in my mind. And that's when I started really looking at the individual, because I was spending so much time observing myself.
Yeah, you tapped into another frequency you didn't know existed.
Yes, and I think it was it was like almost like bad plumbing.
Yeah.
You know, like a frequency that's inside of all of us, but it was like so stuffed with survival mode that once, you know, I was able to meditate and get some of that stuff out, it was like boof, like just burst it open.
Yeah, no, but I love what you just said, internal liberation.
Yeah.
Because we could understand what it is to liberate a country, to
Totally.
go protest, to like
Totally.
do all these radical activism
Yeah.
things. And we forget that we can become the activists of our own internal mind.
Right, exactly.
Like that's powerful.
And I also think, like, you know, I mean, people have been trying to change the world for the better constantly, right? There's always these groups of people who come and they see a better way. But what happens often over and over is that sometimes these groups win. And when you gain power is like, it functions like a magnet on the ego, right? It will literally pull out the roughest parts of the ego.
Yeah.
So if you've never dealt with that stuff, then you so easily start replicating the thing that you were once fighting against.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time. And I love studying history because you literally see it over and over and over. And it's like, whoa, like they got into power and then became demons.
Corruption, right?
And it's wild. But to me, it's like this historical moment brings a new opportunity, because we not only have that similar energy, like let's make this better, but we can make ourselves better at the same time. We can start dealing with that inner roughness that we're all carrying, so that we can like move forward with gentleness, move forward with love, like try to be kind and also skillful. Yeah.
No, and then what I'm hearing there is because there's this constant overcorrection of either trying to erase the past, pretend it doesn't exist, blank over it. But looking back, I love that you look at history. I look at history and humanity and things, and you're like, oh, there was a moment of liberation.
Yeah.
A new regime, a new government came in, and a few years later, it's just as corrupt. A politician starts off with good intentions.
Yeah.
Somehow something happens.
Yeah.
You know, and what are these things? And then maybe if we look at some of these people, let's say Nelson Mandela comes to mind. Like, he was in prison. Like, he could have easily, once he got free, got into power, could have gone like, you know what?
Yeah.
Screw the world. I'm taking it all back because I was locked up. But he's like, no. So it's like, how if we start freeing ourselves, we're not going to worry about imprisoning anyone else.
Oh, totally. I mean, I really believe, like, if people are working on themselves and they're increasing their self-love, and I'm talking like not commercial self-love, like, right? Not like you buying yourself stuff. I'm talking about the energy that you use to know and heal yourself, right? To be able to deeply engage with your emotional history, to just be able to even say to yourself, I accept myself and I still have ways that I need to grow. And like, to me, that's real self-love. But when you start getting to know yourself like that, if it's genuine, compassion for yourself and others will flourish. And as that self-love grows, you're going to be far less interested in intentionally or unintentionally hurting other people.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, that's the missing piece. That's like the thing that the world is, we're lacking, and as individuals, and as that grows inside of individuals, it'll ripple out into society.
I agree. Now you're speaking my language. You are speaking my language here. And so many people struggle with the concept of self-love and self-compassion. How can we start cultivating or working on that journey to start bringing the self-love out? And what was the pivotal moment that you said, oh, Diego, there it is?
Yeah.
What was it that's like, you know what, this is the answer. This is what I get to start leaning into.
Yeah, I mean, the pivotal moment was definitely when I almost lost my life from just like pushing my body to the edge with drugs and alcohol. Because like I was mentioning before, I was evading myself, evading. And the medium to do that was just intoxicating myself way too often. And for a number of years, it was like a 5-6 year period where it was just constant. And when my body could no longer, it was literally like, I feel like I'm dying. In that moment, I was like, I don't want to go out like this. Like, it hit me. There was a moment where it was unavoidable clarity. And I was just like, I don't want to go out like this. I don't want to misuse all of my parents' effort to give me a chance. Because like, right, they gave me no certainty. They gave me a chance.
Yeah.
And I'm just throwing it all away. So I think a few things clicked in that moment. It was like, how did you get here? You got here by lying to yourself, right? So how do we get out? You get out by telling yourself the truth. And all of the processes, and when I luckily was fortunate to come out with my life, and then I started examining. I was like, okay, well, you used to treat your body like trash. Now treat it well, give it nourishment. Like, I remember one of the first things I did was I bought like a tub of barley grass, which was like the old school superfood that was popular back then. And I wasn't getting enough nutrition. And I remember drinking and being like, oh snap, like my brain works better. Like I feel good. Yeah. And going out for walks, and I signed up to go to the gym, and I started changing my habits like that. And I would sit there, and when these emotions would rise, right, when that tension and whatnot, I'm like, okay, it was almost like a challenge. Like, instead of rolling a joint, sit there, and without meditating, just sit there. And I remember mad times just sitting on my bed and being like, whoa, this sucks. Like, I really, like, I can feel the anxiety, I can feel the sadness. And I would feel it 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then it was like, okay, like, it's not as scary as I thought. Like, this isn't like some scary demon that's going to wipe me out. It's like, no, I'm okay. Like, this sucks for sure. It's not a good feeling, but it's not as powerful as I thought it was. And those moments, like practicing that, was a game changer. And I think self-acceptance, like layering it all with self-acceptance along the way. And I did those 3 major things, like sitting with my emotions, but without even any, I don't think of that as a meditation. I was just like literally like, let me just feel this thing.
You were surrendering to that and actually taking power.
Totally. And doing that, being intentional about changing my habits, and then just accepting myself as much as I could along the way. It almost felt like a year of practice before I started, I jumped into my first silent 10-day meditation course, and that just took it to like a whole nother level.
Yeah, I want to talk about one of those. Because I've circled them, but I haven't ever gone to one.
I was wondering if you have or not. I was
No,
like, dude, I think
haven't.
you would
I
dig it,
haven't.
especially as an artist, man.
Yeah.
You'll come out, you'll be like, just
Yeah. No, we'll
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
that separately. I want to go back to a thing that you said is I had to realize I was lying to myself.
Yeah.
You know, and many of us walk around. Let's just say you're the most honest person on earth to other people.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, we keep our word with our friends, with our neighbors, and we don't keep our word with ourselves. And if we
Yeah.
can't start keeping our word with ourselves, we lose trust in ourselves.
Yeah. That's spot on.
You know? And so how did you start gaining the realization that, wait, I need to trust myself to sit in the feelings, to move forward? And the other point is, sometimes we're like, you know what? I'm ready. I'm on my deathbed. I need to go get healthy. And I go to 0 to 100.
Yeah.
You can't do that either. You're like, look,
Yeah.
I got a big tub of barley. I started with
Yeah.
juicing grass. Then I started walking. Then I started.
Yeah.
Was that instinctual to you that you took baby steps into it? Because I think that's the right way we want to when we want
Yeah.
to start intentionally changing our practices.
I think I think you're 100% correct, because the advice I try to give people too is like pick two things you're trying to hit. You know,
Yeah.
don't just like be like, oh, I'm gonna change everything, because a lot of times it's just so overwhelming and you just dump it all, right? So like pick two big things,
Yeah.
make them second nature. Then after that, pick another two big things. But I think for me, it ended up working out that way because that was just what my capacity could handle. Like I couldn't back then my mind and my body were so, weak, for a lack of a better word. I just it was a type of thing where if I had 2 emails, easy things to respond to, I couldn't. It was so mentally difficult
Yeah.
for me to just get there and just write a little thing. And I could literally I felt like I could do less than the bare minimum back then. So to me, it was like, okay, what's next? You know, first it felt critical. It was like, sit with the emotions. And then I was like, okay, I could go, let me go walk for a few blocks, and let me go do, pick up habits, because they were habits that I used to have when I was younger in high school. Like I was familiar with the gym, and, I was like, okay, let me go back to a familiar place. But I think it's really critical. And for some people, they'll have more capacity than others. So it really depends on where you're at as an individual. But
Yeah.
I think it's best to just pick a few things, master them, make them a part of your being, and then keep moving forward.
Yeah, get small wins.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see this in New Year's resolutions all the time. I'm going to lose 50 pounds. I'm going to lose 100 pounds. I'm going to read 20 books. I'm like, pick a thing. Like,
They're way too big.
to
Yeah.
me, like, okay, I want to meditate better. Let me just 5 minutes and breathe.
Yeah.
That's a quick meditation, right?
Yeah.
And then stop putting weights and definitions on what meditation looks like, because there's a million ways to do it.
There's a ton of ways. Yeah.
So was your self-worth ever wrapped up into any of these conversations? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of individuals struggle with. Like, we
Yeah.
don't feel worthy of love, of compassion, of friendship, of ourselves. And sometimes, but we're born worthy. You're already born.
Right.
So we
Right.
are worthy. So
You're
it's
innately
really
valuable.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting but then it's like, then we have this belonging thing. Sometimes
Yeah.
we feel like we don't belong, or how do we belong, or what is that going into?
That's a really good question. I think my big struggle, and I think this is definitely interconnected with self-worth, but I was really bad at receiving love for a long time. And I don't know what it was about the way that my childhood was set up. And I think there was so little, everything was just focused on keeping the boat afloat. So it was only what's most important. And,
Survival needs.
Yeah, it was all survival needs constantly. So in my mind, it was more about okay, how can I help? What can I do? But in terms of receiving, that always just felt really difficult. And that's a long lesson that I've been working on and, developing inside of myself, in terms of realizing that love, with family members or your intimate partner or even friends, love can only really work if your hands are open, right? Because with open hands, can you give something to someone, or can you receive something? And I think there was this lack of self-worth that just kept my hands really closed, and I don't know if it was fear of rejection, or it could have been a lot of things, but I've been, really sort of just training myself to keep them open, right? So support others, and
Yeah.
if people want to be kind towards me, because I think there's a lot of good karma in receiving someone's thank yous, because
Yeah.
they're doing a beautiful act. They're like, oh wow, thank, and I'm like, you're welcome, and
Yeah.
like receive it openly, and don't be like, oh no, it's nothing,
No, totally.
So like, you help people, but let them help you too.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Couple of things here, and there's a poem actually right on this that I want to pull out. But culturally, as
Yeah.
Latinos,
Yeah.
we give, work. So
Yeah.
receiving gets really tough.
Yeah.
And I learned this when I started doing the work years ago.
Yeah.
And I use the work as very open because it applies to
Right,
everyone.
it's a
and
huge
whatever.
field, yeah.
Yeah. But I learned I am not a selfish person, but I learned that I am a selfish person because I had no problem giving, but I never allowed someone to give back, so I didn't receive it. Super crude example is like, hey, Diego, you look great in that jacket. You look real sharp. You look handsome today. And you're like, thank you. I know you too.
Yeah.
You didn't allow my compliment to land. You brushed it off. You actually flipped it back. So that energy exchange didn't happen. That's a
Yeah.
surface level example. But
Yeah.
how often does that happen? Hey, how you doing? Are you having a day? Good. You too?
Yeah.
We do that. And that was, to me, the best example of like, whoa. So if I don't even allow someone to give me a compliment and I flip it back so I can go into my natural giving state,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't receive it. I
Right.
deflected them. I was
Wow.
being selfish, flipping it. Or it's like a mind meld thing
No,
here.
and I've learned, it's almost like even listening to you now, like we're so similar that I was fortunate to have these friends in up in the Bay Area, and what I picked up from them is like they receive even physically. So you'll see a lot of them like they get a compliment and they put their hand on their chest and they're like, wow,
yeah.
I really feel that. And it's like something that I'm been picking up more because it almost like the actual physical action is helping me just take a moment, slow down and be like, wow, thank you. And then once the receiving is full, it's like, yeah, you're also dope. Just by the way.
It's just, it's allowing that beat of like
Yeah.
a couple heartbeats to go on. Yeah, sometimes I'm just like,
Yes.
and just take that breath and take it
so
in.
Nice. Yeah.
No, I know, and I think it's important. So this triggered another guy in here that we have. It's on page 24. I want to love everyone without judging them, without placing anyone on a scale of better or worse. To first see the good in people and treat them with kindness and attention. I want to give without worrying and what I will get about what I will get in return. I want my mind to feel comfortable, radiating love to the entire world. I want to gently hold myself to a higher standard without forcing or rushing.
Oh man, I'm so glad you pointed that poem out because I thought that one was gonna like sort of like slip into, the book was gonna be released and the people who needed to read it would read it. But that one, I was like, let me just be brutally honest right now. I was like, what are the higher goals? And there's this aspect of, so in this Vipassana tradition that I've been meditating in, you meditate for an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, but at the end of each sit, you're practicing 5-10 minutes of metta meditation. And metta is like, you're actively sharing your merits with all beings, and you're, bringing in that resonance of like, may I be happy and may all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful. And to me, I feel like there's a correlation there between the development of your own freedom, right? Which is what Vipassana helps cultivate. But as your freedom gets developed, that you being able to radiate this unconditional love to all beings becomes brighter and stronger and more all-encompassing. And I really am trying to like hold myself to that higher standard of like that's a proper goal. Like I love that goal. I resonate with that goal. It feels good for me. And I think it's like, that's the mission. Like that's what I'm going to be practicing while I'm alive.
Yeah. And what we were just talking about of like giving, but not receiving, to me is if we're in this state here, it's not about giving and receiving in the sense of keeping score. It's you are.
Yeah.
You are being it. And if we can do it without judgment
Mm-hmm.
of self and of others,
Mm-hmm.
and you just radiate love around the world, and like people just start feeling it's contagious.
It's powerful, man. Like I've met some teachers in the same tradition who like have been meditating for 30, 40, 50 years, right? Like hitting it hard. When you're around them, like, man, they're like plugged in like that all the time. Like you get around them and their sort of love gravity is so strong that you just get pulled right into their calmness. And or when they radiate meta intentionally, it's like it feels like medicine. It's just like wow, and you can just your whole body relaxes, and it's really powerful.
And we just become contagious.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. So Diego, on top of just trying to be magnetic and radiate love, I paint love around the world. How would you have a great poem here and I'm going to read it, but I want to ask you the question first. What is love? How would you define it?
Oh, I love that question. I think love is, honestly, I think it's like the highest state of clarity. Like that's the way I would think about it, because when a mind becomes stunningly clear, sort of like, fully light, it is viewing reality through this lens of love. And whether you have to say no to someone or whether you have to say yes to someone, like it's love. Like people like will exist through love. And I'm thinking about, like high level beings like the Buddha, Jesus, like these sort of archetypes that a lot of people view as, teachers and guides. And these are beings that like literally moved through love. But you get there through like this, deep cultivation. And it's really, simultaneously cultivating and simultaneously letting go of all views, like letting go of everything. And then this burst of freedom comes. But to me, love is the ultimate clarity where no matter what each situation, you're processing it through compassion.
No, it's beautiful. Clarity, compassion.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I say love is undefinable.
Yeah.
The dictionary says it's a strong feeling of affection.
Oh, that sucks.
It's so much more than that, right? Yeah. That's why we're on this mission.
It's wisdom,
exactly.
Yeah.
That does suck. So here, you wrote this one. This is the last one I'm going to read. Everyone else, please get the book. It's amazing. Love is much bigger than relationships. Love is the way you heal yourself, the kindness you give others, the gentleness you give yourself in turbulent times, the space you hold for close friends, the intention with which you live in the present, and the energy that changes the world. Love is every moment that elevates the human experience and all the small things that make life shine.
I love that. And I love that you pointed out your definition too, because it's undefinable because it stretches so far. And it's like, to me, it's like whenever you're putting forward what the Buddha calls right action, right? Mm-hmm. Like in those moments of right action where you like acted with, in mind towards kindness for yourself and other people, like those are all moments of love. And sometimes it looks like healing yourself. Sometimes it looks like chilling with your best friend. And other times it looks like you like trying to change the world. Yeah. It's just, it's so expansive.
Yeah. And I think it's not judging it, right? Because it's also walking away from bad relationships. It's also walking away from bad habits. It's also like choosing the most important or more empowering position you can be in. Yeah. So it's like, however we want to apply it, it's going to be applicable to our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I think love too is like, not being attached to your own perspective, because that's something I found really helpful. Like when I'm, like as I'm talking to you, I'm like, I want to learn more about the way you see the world, right? And like, even if like, it's like it'll align 95% and there are slight differences, it's like, instead of trying to make you see the world the way I see it, it's like, no, wait, like, I want to listen, tell me more, and so that we're together, there's no, it's not like a competition and there's no debate, but it's like, let's just like think and move together, you know? And it feels...
It's an invitation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I'll open the door. You walk through, walk with me.
Yeah.
Take what you want. Yeah.
It's nice. Yeah. I feel like love is like, I I always love this quote so much, but Thich Nhat Hanh was like, love is understanding. So that to me feels like a really important version of that.
And I think there's a million. Love is being human. Love is finding peace. Love is greatness. Love is, and once we start understanding that, one of the things that I'm really realizing, especially if we start leaning into this more, we don't have to agree with everybody on this planet.
No.
We do not. We don't have to align with people's opinions, values, whatever, right? But we do, as humans, get to accept one another as humans on the same journey with the same challenges. We just have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And if we could just wrap our minds around, okay, well, your perspective's not mine. Let me not judge you for that. And I'm not going to judge myself for mine. And I'm not going to want you to judge my, and like we just respect this point of it. We're like, look, I accept you as human. Obviously, asterisk, there's some outliers. We're not talking about the extremes of humans. But if we can actually align on that, do you believe that we can get along better? Do you believe that racism and labels and all these things that are going around can actually...
I think you hit at just like one of the most critical aspects and kind of failures of where humanity is clearly showing its immaturity, is that we're like constantly dehumanizing each other.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to violence. Like when it comes to like, if one group is going to wage war against another group, to be able to successfully do that, they have to dehumanize them in their minds. Because, it's much like of course you see violence on the individual level, on the group level as well. But I think it's a lot harder to be violent towards your neighbor when you know them so well and they're like such clear, shining human beings in your mind, whether you like them or not.
Yeah.
Right. But there's something that happens at the group level that, and I remember reading this book back in college, Freud's group psychology and the analysis of the ego. And in that book, he talks about how when beings come together in groups, like their sense of morality just goes down, and they start behaving in pretty wild ways. And you see that a lot in riots or war.
Like herd mentality. Right?
Yeah. And it'll just get like much more animalistic than, more cordial. And I think it's a real battle because to me, like one of the main things that inspired me to write from the beginning was like, I've always loved history. And when I started examining myself, I was like, I'm really immature. Like I got a lot of growing up to do. Yeah. But then I started thinking about the world and I was like, we're young. Like we're really young. And that's where young Pueblo came from. Like, right. It's young people. And to me, humanity is so young because we haven't mastered the fundamentals. We haven't mastered the basics. And the example I like to give is when you go to kindergarten, like what are the basic things that they're trying to teach you, right? To clean up after yourself, to share, to be kind with one another, to tell the truth, to not hit each other, like basics. We may be able to do those things as individuals, but as a collective, as a humanity, we fail at those things. Yeah. And I think we have a lot of growing up to do, but a lot of that starts with doing our best to recognize the humanity in one another, because then we'll show up better. Yeah.
No, and that's so true. And you were the dehumanizing thing, because I'm looking, and I use this example often now because I live in Santa Monica, Venice. I walk all around. Right. There's homeless people everywhere. And if you want to talk about dehumanizing, homeless people are already thought of the worst. Yeah. But I believe how we dehumanize ourselves in one very strong capacity is every time we walk by a homeless person, I'm going to asterisk it again. Obviously, not the one that's going off the rocker, swinging their arms all over the place, but just the one sitting there, calm, relaxed, and we look away intentionally or close our eyes or just ignore and pretend they're not there. We are turning off our own humanity. Totally. For whatever reason. Maybe you're like, I don't want them to ask for money. I don't want to say no, or whatever it is. Besides that, so I intentionally just like, I look at them, I smile, I nod, and I acknowledge them. Like, you're human. Your challenges are just greater right now. Yeah. But I'm going to acknowledge that I see you and I'm there, and I keep going. And I've realized, because I caught myself in the past looking away. And then I'm like, that didn't make me feel good. Why am I doing that? You know, so that
Yeah.
dehumanize. How often do we do that in everything? Let's not even take homeless. You're at the market and the clerk ringing you up is not at your level of income or what you do as success.
Yeah.
Because I remember in my early 20s when I was in real estate, I made a lot of money. I had big rims and diamond watches, and I was measured by, I'm a Colombiano, right?
Yeah,
We're already
yeah.
ostentatious.
You had the rims. That's so funny.
You know, so, but it's like, that's how I measured success.
Yeah.
And you start seeing, well, like how, at what level are we dehumanizing everyone because we're putting a value on them now? And then what's the value we're giving ourselves?
I know, man. I think that's why like it feels like the big challenge is like, how can we let love design society, right? And I know a lot of like people who, you know, love the left and right, they'll listen to that and be like, that sounds dumb. And I'm like, no,
I
like
know.
challenge yourself, right? Like challenge yourself to like, what would it look like if compassion and love were in charge of designing social structures? Because I think that's ultimately the direction we're going to go in.
Yeah.
Because we're talking the long game. I'm not talking like 10 years from now.
For sure.
We're talking 100 years, right? And I just think it's so interesting and awe-inspiring that at the same time that the world is like going through such tremendous challenges, right? Income inequalities through the roof. Like, you know, there's so much more that we can do about education, about climate. You could just go on and on. There's so many big issues, like, but at the same time that we have these massive issues, all these healing modalities have appeared globally.
Yeah.
Right? And they've been growing in their different sectors or different parts of the world. But now that we live in a globalized world, like from here to Singapore, you can just type in like, what should I do about my anxiety? And you're going to get mad options. You're going to get tons of, and then you kind of just find something that meets you where you're at. And to me, it's like that's a special historic moment. Like we haven't had that before where there's millions of people in therapy. There's millions of people actively meditating. Like, and that number is going to continue growing because why? Like people are tired of being miserable. Right. Like, it's just like, this sucks. You know, let me see if I could find a way to improve this inner situation. And I think the long-term effect of that is that people will become much more connected to the suffering of others in a way that's manageable, right? It's not like sinking your own boat. Because I think that's one of the reasons why we turn away from suffering is like our suffering is already so much. And it's like to see others suffer as well. It's just it almost feels like you're drowning.
I agree, yeah.
But at the same time, like as you heal yourself, your capacity grows. And people are going to be able to just like look at themselves better, look at the world better with clearer, more loving eyes. And they're going to be like, oh, everybody should have a home. Right. And start, you know, moving through these issues in a way that's just a lot more compassionate than it used to be. I feel like we need to challenge ourselves. Like we're constantly moving from left to right, but we never go up. So we gotta elevate.
I love everything you just said. I call it the purple party. Right in the middle. It's the top of the pyramid. Now I know who's going to run with us. It is definitely a long game, and I do agree that is how we change it. And another thing you just said there is like most of us that whatever issues we're having or experiencing, we go find people having the same issue and commiserate. Let's go wallow in our victimness. Woo!
Join me in my anger.
Exactly. But now with the tools and the shift, look at the opposite. Let's go find the empowered people doing the work with the same anxiety, depression issues and all that. But let's say, hey, I'm going to lift you up. You lift me up. Keep me accountable to make sure I stay in therapy or meditate, or let's go sit on the beach and watch the sunrise, the sunset. So you could take the same thing you're doing now, but you're just flipping it to the lens of love. Are we operating from that fear, or are we operating from love?
You know what's interesting, right? On that same level, as people are gathering and they're, you know, sort of lifting each other up in their healing and their bonding on that level. I've read a few times now that often the groups that change the world are simply the ones that are most organized, not that have the most people. So it makes me wonder, like, as time moves forward, if more healed people or people that are in the midst of healing are coming together and organizing themselves and looking at different sort of objectives or different parts of the world, that they're like, oh, you know, this needs to be changed. And because ultimately, like, you don't need everyone to be on the same page to shift the social structure. That's been repeated over and over in history. Like, you can have, you know, groups of 30,000 change the world. I mean, change a country that's 100 million people.
Yeah.
So I might, you know, it's daunting out there, but I honestly, like, the medicine's here, right? So it's just a matter of us taking it and using it.
No,
Yeah.
that's a great perspective.
Yeah.
So a couple practical tips. Meditation is a big piece of your life now and a component.
Yeah.
You meditate 2 hours a day. I can't even wrap my head around that. You've done, I think, multiple 10-day silent retreats.
Very many, yes.
You know, it's on my list of a thing at some point. I also feel like, you know, when we can all make up the excuses, but I have a 2.5-year-old, you know, in April, we're going to have another one. Yep. Like, it'd be hard to get away. And then,
especially in that moment of your life, for sure. But eventually those kids will be 7 and 9.
I agree.
And then
that's when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep myself accountable to this year. But what are practical ways to start doing this? Because, look, we're all busy. We have the babies. We have wives. We have relationships. We have brothers. We have multiple facets to your business. But we also know that some of the heaviest hitter power business moguls in the world find the time to meditate also.
Right.
And obviously some people are like, yeah, but they can afford to do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, let's just be clear. What is the practical thing we can do today? A couple quick tips, maybe some time zones.
Yeah.
I would also say, like, read a page from one of your books. Pull out a young Pueblo poem and like, yo, meditate on that poem for the day. What did it mean to you? Or look at a piece of artwork or whatever it is. But
I think you hit it right there, right? Where it depends on how much you want to and can invest in yourself. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about time, right? So to me, I don't like find time to meditate. I make time, right? Like I bend time so that I can always meditate 2 hours a day.
You don't say that again, though.
Yeah, you don't find time. You make time. And I literally will like bend the way my day is structured to have these 2 pillars of my day. And you know, to me, it's so important because I've seen the results and I've seen them over and over again. When I sit 2 hours a day, every facet of my life is clearer, more vibrant. And it's you know, taken my marriage to a whole nother more beautiful level, improved my relationship with my parents, with my siblings. It's helping me with every facet of work. And I wouldn't want to bring a lesser version of myself to all those situations. Yeah. So I keep meditating because this growth is like, I'm benefiting from it internally, but it's radiating outward. So to me, it's like, I think about the investment. It's like, this is a big investment, provides massive results. And I think for people who are, you know, especially if they're just getting started, it's like, you find your zone, like find the thing that helps you reflect. Like, even if you're not actually meditating, but if you're reflecting on an intellectual level, almost like journaling in your own mind, right? Like, you don't need to always have a pen and paper, but it's like, that's one of the reasons why I put this book together in this format. It's meant for people to, like, if they're on the subway, because I was living in the East Coast when I started writing. So I'd always think of people, you know, being on the subway for 30 minutes before they get to work. They pull out the book, you know, they read 4 or 5 pages, and then it gives them something to just like ponder about in the back of their head while they're, you know, smacking away on the keyboard or doing whatever it is that they're doing. So to me, it's like, if you spend time reflecting on yourself, like, you can reflect on yourself while you're also doing other things, you know, like while you're in the motion of doing something else, because the human mind is always thinking. So give it a different object, right? Give it something else to think about. But I think setting aside time for like formal meditation is, like, just speaking from experience, is the most invaluable thing that I've ever done. And like, life has gotten busy. Like, dude, I'm mad busy.
Yeah.
So,
how many books? Like, you're on a book tour now. Like, you're definitely busy.
Yeah. I started a venture capital company. I'm opening another company next year, and time is, like, you know, always kind of short. And there's just a lot to do, but the reason I'm able to do all that stuff is because I'm meditating. If I wasn't meditating, I'd just be stressed, you know, and just like full of like, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? But the meditating just helps me show up a little more calmly.
Fair. I mean, that's perfect. I think the reframe is how are we defining the practice of meditation? Thinking that we can only sit in a quiet room in the dark by ourselves and do nothing else, because my 15-minute walk to the gym, that's my morning meditation, setting up for my gym. Then I walk home and I kind of cool down and do that thing. Because I've had that conversation now with people that practice, and I'm like, oh, I am doing this. Now it's choosing it as the reframe. And like, no, this is, boom, this is when I'm getting in the zone. This is me meditating. This is me preparing.
Yeah, yeah.
And consistency. Just doing it every day. So do you do the same 2 hours every day, day in, out, with travel and everything?
Every day. Every day. I've been doing that for 8 years. And it's not, not always at the same time. Like it depends on like, when I wake up, what's happening that day. If I have sometimes I'll wake up and do like 2 hours of work and then meditate, or I'll meditate right away. And then in the evening, it's usually sometime after dinner, I'll meditate. Yeah. But it's been like that for a number of years. And it's like, I just keep going because it's just providing, like I'm learning so much. Like I'm learning, and I enjoy learning, and especially learning about like when you're in this particular technique, right? When you're sitting down and you're meditating, it's almost like you're getting a degree in universal law, right? You're learning about how the universe functions, but within the framework of your body. And one of the primary laws that immediately comes forward is impermanence. Everything is always changing.
Yeah.
It's changing at every single level of existence, atomic, physical, like at, the mental level, the cosmological, like everything is always changing. And if you reject that change, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But if you embrace it, then you'll be able to flow a lot better through the ups and downs of life.
No, I mean, we're at every level. We're changing. You're right. Totally. It's impermanent. Also, the art. I paint mostly murals. Sometimes a mural's gone. People are like, oh, my God, the mural is gone. I'm like, it lived its life. How does that make you feel? I'm like, I put in 6 12-hour days. I mean, I put some blood into it, but it lived 7 years. Like,
yeah, that's a beautiful.
It's time for the next thing,
It lasted for some time. That's dope. Yeah.
So it's looking at it that way. It's like that effort of putting in the work. The journey was the end result of the mural is not so much the goal. It's the journey of everything and getting to the point of being able to put it up.
Yeah. And
I always say every mural is like a journal entry in my diary, and the streets are my diary.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that, because that non-attachment with your work, I think, it creates space for even more beauty to be like to just emerge from you.
Perfectionist too, right?
Yeah.
Like I could imagine how you do when you're writing your books and all that. Like, oh, is that the right word? Is it like?
Oh my gosh, I tell people that all the time. Like, listen, you could edit forever. You can just like keep changing words forever, but at some point, you just got to cut it, let it loose into the wild, and it does what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a thing about letting go, right?
Yeah.
So, you do a lot of your work, your poetry, your writings. It resonates with a ton of people. What do you hope the key takeaway, key conversation that if anyone looks at your work, they just take it away? Like if it was summed up in a sentence, what is that?
Oh, definitely that healing is possible. Healing is possible, I think, shocked me into writing. Like I was so surprised by it, because like when I grew up, right, growing up in the city of Boston, I felt like this was a time where if you had a mental issue or a physical issue, you were just going to have to deal with it for the rest of your life. So when I started meditating and my mind was genuinely feeling better, I was like, what's happening? Like, is this real? Like, is this like, can you actually feel better?
Yeah. Am I fixing myself?
Yeah. Like I kept going back, because I was like, I'm done lying to myself. So I want to make sure that everything's like actually genuine.
Yeah.
And when I saw that it was undeniable, and most of that was through behavioral changes. Like I was like, I'm making better decisions.
Yeah.
I was just shocked by it. I was like, whoa, like healing is possible. Nobody told me. How come nobody told me?
Right?
Yeah.
They're like, no, you just need to be on these pills forever. No, you need to do this. And you're like, okay. Well, and what's funny? A little bit could be in the prove them wrong. So if anyone has that mentality, which isn't always that's not actually the right mentality. I had that for a long. Oh yeah, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to get to the top by walking over everyone. But if we have a little bit of that, we can start proving ourselves wrong. Yeah. And then maybe let's start proving people right. Quickly, as we start winding down, we started off a little bit with collaboration.
Yeah.
And you brought it up, and I think it's important that artists of all capacities.
Oh, let's talk about it.
Especially when we're in these fields, like it's our responsibility to start collaborating. Let's reach out. Let's like, I know I try to DM. Sometimes it's not going to get in there. Just persistency. Eventually something's going to happen. So like, what are your thoughts around that? And how can we start championing this collaborative spirit? And especially when we're talking about this message of love and changing humanity.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I've learned and been really grateful for in, being in the Instagram sort of fitness space, like, like, and not in terms of fitness itself, but it's in this space where it's do or die sometimes. It feels like, it's you versus the algorithm. Like, what, is your message or your art going to get out there? And I've been really, grateful to the people who I either am aware of, have supported me, or unaware of, because there's a lot of people that you're not aware of that have had your back for a long time and have been like, giving your art or your books to different people. And I think in reflecting and realizing that, I was like, well, I need to tell other people about what I like, what artists are inspiring me, and getting it out there and letting other people know, like, I love like what this one therapist says, or I love what, these other people are writing, because I think it's good. It's like, one, it's good karma, like keep moving it forward, pushing it forward. And the same way that other people have lifted me up. And I've been really fortunate to be friends with Alex L and Nedra Tawwab and my friend Hunter's Third Eye Thoughts and a few other people, Sarah Kubrick. So we have this chat group, also Mikkel and Corey Allen, right? We have this chat group where it's we call it TCP, and we were just thinking about changing the name. We were like joking around. It's like more like anti-algorithm alliance, right?
Yeah.
And amongst us, like we, some of us are writers, some of us release books, but we've been sharing not only like tips and tricks on like how we can better use Instagram and learn how to use its tools, and just try to set ourselves up for the next few years in terms of how to properly use it, because it's an ever-changing tool. But what's been even more valuable is like supporting each other in getting literary agents. Like, how do you do publishing deals? How do you like find the right speaking person? And I think talking about these things as a group, and sharing our manuscripts with each other before the books come out, and getting feedback, and doing these things as artists, like, it feels so important to be honest and open about, even like numbers, like what these deals look like, what you should be getting, because we're individuals and we're facing institutions, right? And when you're facing an institution, they're going to want to work with you, but they're going to want to work with you at the lowest dollar possible.
And usually artists take a bath
in
all the areas of being an artist.
Yeah. And it's hard. So we're like, we've just been trying to help each other out. And I feel like, that's been our sort of our own little group chat. But then outside of that, I've been trying to just put other artists on that I've been coming across, and whether they have, 1,000, 2,000 followers, or like another 1,000,000 followers or whatnot. But you never know. Like, someone may have 1,000,000 followers, and it's like you've never seen their stuff ever before. Yeah. So just showing the different flavors that are out there feels really important.
No, I love that. And it's a collaborative, no ego. We're not competing. Okay, we might be in the same space, but we're not competing. We're on this mission of elevating humanity.
Yeah. And
if we can all align on that, it gets better.
It does. And it's tough too, because you see some of your favorite artists, and like they're, it's tough seeing and they follow 0 people. And it's like, really? Like, I'm sure you got mad friends, like, why do you want to follow 0 people?
Yeah.
And I think putting other people on is like part of the treat of like having, a little bit of success.
No, well said. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So if you're a young, aspiring poet, writer, reach out.
Yeah.
And be consistent, because sometimes we get lost in DM, abyss. Because I know I go in there and sometimes like, oh, I didn't reply to that I didn't see it. If I didn't see it,
you get inundated with stuff.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, and the main advice is don't stop.
Yeah.
Don't stop. Like, just keep writing. Whatever type of art you put out there, continuity, consistency. Like, it's the most consistent people that end up getting a lot of success. I really believe that.
I know people probably ask you this, but I know when people ask me, Ruben, how did you get to this point? Like, how did you make this happen? I'm like, I show up every day.
Yeah.
And do the work.
Totally. I think it's the same thing. Like, I remember back in like 2017 when I was putting things out there on Instagram, there were so many amazing writers and a lot of them just like fizzled out, you know, and it's tough to see, especially some super talented ones that I was like, wow, this person's a genius. And then they stop. Yeah.
I remember I started an Instagram account for poetry. Quickly got up to like 5,000 followers, but then all this started growing. I'm like, do I merge it? Do I keep it growing? So I could see that.
Yeah.
So, last couple questions. What impact do you aspire to leave your readers with?
I think the major impact is a mixture of inspiration and also, may all these pieces be a point of reflection, whether you agree with them or not, right? I hope that it makes you like think about particular parts of your life or think about the direction that you're moving in. Is that the direction you want to be moving in? So hopefully that reflection can inspire more intentionality.
Yeah, almost like leaving them with questions to start.
Yeah. It's all, those books are literally just for reflection.
Yeah.
And I hope that it just helps shine a light.
Well, I know it is from what I've read.
Yeah.
And final question, Diego. How do you define living a life through love?
I wrote a poem about this. That's why I was like so amazed. It's in my first book, Inward, about living through love. And to me, today, the most important thing about that feels like moving forward with gentleness. Because with the people that I know, with the people that I'm meeting for the first time, I don't know how their day's been. I don't know what you've been up to. I don't even really know what primary emotion you're holding in that moment that we're meeting, right? So to move forward with gentleness feels like the everyday mission for me. And I think that's like an aspect of living through love because, I'd rather show up and leave like a memory of gentleness than a memory of roughness. Because I remember how it used to be when I was like in high school and, the early days in college, it was like, it's just rough. Like I was a rough kid.
Yeah.
So, but now it's like, let me, be mindful of my words as best as I can. And I know everyone's not going to perceive you the way you want to be perceived, but you can still try.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Let's just be gentle with each other and ourselves.
Yeah.
And where can the audience find you?
One of my favorite places that I'm hanging out now is on Substack. So Young Pueblo, you just drop the o.substack.com. And there you can find my longer pieces of writing. I'm also on Instagram, Young Pueblo with an underscore in the middle. And you can find my books in bookstores.
Amazing. And we'll link all that up. Thank you so much for trekking down to LA.
Yeah.
For being here, for joining us in the studio. I appreciate you. I acknowledge the work that you've been doing and the healing that's like your energy shows that.
Oh, hermano, I'm so glad that all this came together so seamlessly and thank you. Thank you for being my brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Live Through Love. If you love this episode, you'll love this episode.